Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For over 150 years, ours has been a church of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom, many spiritual paths, and many identities. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, and your hopes for our world are welcome here. Our doors are closed because our hearts are open, living our values of care and compassion for each other and the community. You can stay connected online through Sunday services and coffee hour, as well as small groups and forums. You can visit our website or see the e-news or contact the church or the staff if you'd like to get connected with any groups. And today is a special service, an annual tradition of our accessibility and inclusion ministry team, which has worked and taught and learned with the congregation for over a decade, striving to make our church as inclusive as possible, living our values deeper and deeper, learning as we go. Today, that team reflects on the work that has been done over these years and is yet to do both within our church and beyond in the wider world. We're grateful to them for their hard work, not only on this service, but over these many years, and for their heart, creating and helping create a more welcoming church. So thank you to that team and for this service. Each week, our offering goes to support people within and beyond our church, and for this special service, our collection will be given entirely to ARC of Southeast Minnesota, providing critical services for those with intellectual and developmental disabilities in our region. You'll learn a little more about them later in the service. You can give at uurochmn.org/give, and thank you for your generosity. And in the words of the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
I'm Paula Horner, a member of AIM, Accessibility and Inclusion Ministry. We are an AIM congregation, the fourth congregation in the UUA to receive this designation. AIM certifies congregations as committed and engaged in becoming accessible and inclusive religious communities, and strives to develop environments where every person brings the fullness of their lived experience and their independence into being. The AIM program guides congregations to deepen their understanding of disability as an aspect of the human experience and counteracts society's stereotypes of disability. Today, we are offering a service celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Good to take a moment and reflect on this history. This landmark bill was signed into law 30 years ago today, July 26, 1990, by President George H.W. Bush. Inspired by the civil rights movement, people with disabilities organized, lobbied, protested, and called attention to the many injustices that lack of accessibility and inclusion caused. This legislation provided civil rights protections to individuals with physical and mental disabilities and guaranteed equal opportunities in public accommodations, employment, transportation, state and local government services, and telecommunications. Today we will hear from two members and a past member of our church about how this law has worked or not for them. We will sing a familiar hymn, but with some modifications. Since its inception, Standing on the Side of Love received feedback from the disability rights activists within Unitarian Universalism about the exclusionary and ableist language of the word standing. Language matters. Pushed forward by a resolution at General Assembly in 2017, it seems most appropriate to sing this hymn today and honor that feedback with the changes Jason Shelton, the composer, made.
The instrumental pieces for this morning's service are all composed for only one hand. I chose these selections because I think they illustrate that with creativity and ingenuity, we can provide accommodations that create opportunities. I understand, talking with some of our church family members, that our youngest members watch the virtual services up to and through Amy's storytelling. So I thought today I would share a second story for our younger members. Only my story is in the form of a song. And it's from one of our friends. He's green and he hops around on Sesame Street with his friends Big Bird and Bert and Ernie. And his name is Kermit the Frog. And Kermit sings the song Bein' Green. And he sings about how green is what he is, and it makes him different. And sometimes it's hard to be different. But he decides that being green is who he is, and that's okay. It's not that easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves. When I think it could be nicer being red or yellow or gold, or something much more colorful like that. It's not that easy being green. It seems you blend in with so many other ordinary things. And people tend to pass you over, 'cause you're not standing out like flashy sparkles on the water or stars in the sky. But green is the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly like, and green can be big like an ocean, or important like a mountain, or tall like a tree. When green is all there is to be, it could make you wonder why, but why wonder? Why wonder? I am green and it'll do fine. It's beautiful and I think it's what I want to be.
This is the Unitarian Universalist Church. This is the Church of the Flaming Chalice. This is the Church of the Open Mind. This is the Church of the Loving Heart, where friends come together and share.
This prayer was written for the 30th anniversary of the ADA by Suzanne Fast. And as part of the prayer, we will include a short video of those who first fought for the ADA. Spirit of love, lift up our hearts. Today, we celebrate the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which affirms the civil rights of the people with disabilities in our country. We rejoice in the welcome the ADA has brought to the people who had so long been unrecognized and hidden away. We are grateful for those who struggled so long and so hard to bring the promise of the ADA into law. We give thanks for our ancestors in activism, Ed Roberts and Justin Dart, whose strength and passion laid the foundations of the act. For those who crawled up the Capitol steps, those who wrote the letters, and those who told how it was. Now let us pause for a moment and look into the past from where the ADA began and hear the stories of those who share how it was.
There was a belief that if you had a disability, you didn't have any desire to live a life. You didn't have the goals and the dreams that somebody non-disabled had.
When people ask me how I got involved in this, I say, well, it was easy. I got committed to a mental hospital. And as soon as that happened to me, I had this very powerful conviction that something was fundamentally wrong.
And I think particularly at Willowbrook that we have a situation that borders on a snake pit.
They're stuck there, and they didn't belong there. They didn't want to be there, and we wanted them free.
Close them all. Don't fix them.
Sticking that microphone into Eddie's mouth while he's laying in his iron lung, it's like blew people's minds. Sometimes, in order to get somebody's attention, you have to hit them across the head with a 2x4, and Eddie was the 2x4 of the community.
Now, those of us in Berkeley, when you talk demonstration to Berkeleyites, I mean, we knew how to organize the protest.
It's the first really militant thing that disabled people have ever done, and we want people to listen to us.
We had a vision. We expected to change the world. We had a compelling need, and we had a compelling story. You know, if you have a good story, it's not hard to get people to watch it or listen to it.
Seriously. They chained all the wheelchairs together, and some people chained their bodies to each other. And the police were just going berserk. They didn't know what to do. It was great, you know.
Let the shameful wall of exclusion finally come tumbling down.
Having been told for so long how powerless we were, and here we were with the President of the United States signing this document that was our Emancipation Proclamation.
The development of true discrimination takes decades and centuries. I don't believe that discrimination easily ends just because we've been able to get pieces of legislation passed.
This video is a powerful testament to the struggle of a determined group of disability activists fighting for their civil rights and the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Suzanne Fast's prayer for the 30th anniversary of the ADA continues, and she writes, "We know, too, that as a society we often fall short of the promise of the ADA. Even after 30 years, many places are not accessible. Many new technologies are not accessible. Many hearts have yet to make room for the lived experience of people with disabilities. Unemployment or segregated employment, the sub-minimum wage, inaccessible housing and transportation, mass incarceration, police violence, disenfranchisement, endless waiting lists for services that make independent living possible, and so many more obstacles show that inclusion is still only a promise. So may we join with all those who work to keep the spirit of the ADA strong. May we be numbered among the people who insist that the law is not mere words on paper and work to bring down the barriers that still remain. May we pledge ourselves to affirm both that people with disabilities are worthy and part of the web that binds us to each other. May all of us be accepted here for who we are becoming, and the unique gifts each of us brings to our community. And may it always be so.
So along with our special presenters today, we have a special reader today. The Vice President of our church board, Kim Reed, will be reading you a story about how it feels to get around in wheels.
Rolling Along, the story of Taylor and his wheelchair. Hi, my name is Taylor. I have a twin brother, Tyler, who looks a lot like me. He is also my best friend. We both like to eat chocolate ice cream, wrestle with each other, and watch the Chicago Bulls play basketball. We both like to read about dinosaurs. But unlike Tyler, I was born with cerebral palsy. It causes my brain to tell my muscles to jump instead of moving slowly. Tyler can run, jump, and skip, but because I have cerebral palsy, it's hard for me to walk. I use a walker to move around. It helps me go short distances by myself, but I move very slowly and get tired easily. I'm excited to be able to get a wheelchair, but one of my friends felt sorry for me when he heard I would be getting a wheelchair. He thought that even though it took a long time to move with my walker, getting around on my own 2 feet was better than rolling along in a wheelchair. I told him I can still use my walker for short distances, but when I get my wheelchair, I won't always get so tired, and I'll be able to move on my own. When I told my friend this, he was as happy as I was. One day, Mom and Dad and Tyler brought me to therapy for a big surprise. My new wheelchair had come in. It was bright red and blue with thick tires. I was so excited, and I knew I would be able to get around faster in a wheelchair than I could with my walker. Now I can turn to the right and the left, and I'm even learning how to pop a wheelie, which means making the wheelchair's front wheels pop up in the air. That way I can get over bumps or big cracks in the sidewalk or at the edge of the sidewalk and the road. Tyler helps me practice wheelies by pulling back on my wheelchair handles and stepping on the lower bar. This lifts up the front of the chair a little, and then I balance myself in the chair and I try to get over the bump. When I'm a little bigger and stronger, I think I'll be able to pop a wheelie all by myself. But now I need to pay attention to things that people who aren't in wheelchairs don't have to worry about. If a building has stairs at the front entrance and no ramp, I can't roll myself up to the door. If its heavy front doors don't open with a button, I can't go inside. If the building has stairs or an escalator inside but no elevator, I can't get to the other floors. My school has made important changes for people like me in wheelchairs. There's a cement ramp that zigzags up and around the stairs, and I can wheel myself to the top. There's a special silver button on the wall outside, and when I push it, the front doors open and I can wheel myself inside. I can roll down the hallway to the classrooms and go through the rooms' doorways by myself. I can get a drink of water all by myself from the water fountain because it's just the right height for people in wheelchairs. I can wash my hands at the lower sink in the bathroom, and I can even get in a large bathroom stall because it has a wide door that opens out so my wheelchair and I can fit inside. My wheelchair lets me do a lot, like play all kinds of different sports with Tyler. Our favorite is basketball. Tyler runs on his 2 feet and does a layup. I push and steer my wheelchair with one hand and dribble the ball with my other hand. I roll as quickly as I can to the basket in my wheelchair and use both hands to shoot. It's hard, but I'm getting better and better, and sometimes I score as many points as Tyler. My wheelchair helps me go more places on my own and do more of the things I want to do. Now, nothing can stop me.
Thanks, Kim, for reading our story today. It's always nice to hear different voices. And as the story emphasizes, it's always good to hear different perspectives, because sometimes it can help you understand what somebody is going through when you just listen to them or see things from their point of view.
We are separated by space and time, but we are still together, and we gather in a virtual way as we continue to create a place of communal caring and connection. Be enriched by the virtual presence of each other, and draw yourself into the heart of love at this time of service and reflection. In this time together, we ask that our minds be open, our hearts welcoming, our arms embracing. We honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Vicki Wolf, serving as our caring coordinator for the last week, arranging care for our members and friends in need. Paula Horner will take over tomorrow for the next 2 weeks, and we thank her for that. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through these challenging times. And as we continue through this time of staying at home, many of us may need additional care, whether it be pastoral care, grocery delivery, or an errand run. And we encourage you to reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. We thank all of you who have offered to assist our members with these requests, and we send gratitude to you all for serving our congregation during this time. In this community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person here has value. Each person's experience matters. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, or by loneliness. We celebrate and revel in those who are celebrating joys in their lives. May their happiness lift us all. May all of us find comfort, hope, joy, and healing strength in this community. A message to you all from Steve Smith. He thanks you all very much for your caring and for your positive thoughts during this time of recovery. He says, each of the multiple cards, notes, and socially distant visits have been just the right thing to hasten my recovery. Your expressions, thoughts, and kind words have been a blessing and remind me of our fantastic community and how lucky we are. Thank you again. And we continue to send healing strength to Steve. As we have over these last few months, we need to continue to reach out to all in our community to let them know we are still here and still holding and supporting them. We encourage you all to send cards and make calls and support your local businesses, opening the doors of communication and connection. May the faith in the spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
Wherever you are, I invite you to take a deep breath and breathe deep the breath of life. Breathe deeply in this house of love and justice, hope and grace. Know that here you are named and you are known as beloved, as sacred, as welcome. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning, above you the stars and their ancient light, and you here held between, alive, present. I invite you into this time of prayer, first by sharing a few silent breaths together. Spirit of life and source of love, God of 1,000 names and beyond all naming, may we be reminded that if our spirituality is to be true, our faith, our beliefs, our ethics worth anything to ourselves or the world, then they must always lead us beyond ourselves alone. It is there at the edges of our own understanding where spirit and soul and justice and love dwell, drawing us further and further still to where love leads us next, casting wider and wider circles of possibility, of inclusion, of welcome, making space in our churches, our communities, our hearts for the fullness, sometimes the messiness, and always the beauty of humanity, where every soul is sacred, and we build a world that believes that. This day we hold all those who suffer in mind, in body, in spirit. I invite you to bring the names you're holding in your own heart this day, in joy or in sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all those names, spoken and unspoken, may we be forever grateful for the fabric of love and life that weaves us together. May those threads hold us in love and in strength. These words of meditation come from Catherine Hathaway. I invented this rule for myself to be applied to every decision that I might have to make in the future. I would sort out all the arguments and see which belonged to fear and which belonged to creativity. The other things being equal, I would make the decision which had the larger number of creative reasons on its side. I think it must be a rule, something like this, that makes crocuses come pushing through cold mud. May it be so, and amen.
The ARC Minnesota Southeast Region promotes and protects the human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, actively supporting them and their families in a lifetime of full inclusion and participation in their communities. This exemplifies the UU principle of valuing the worth and dignity of every individual. What is now the ARC Minnesota Southeast Region was begun by a small group of Rochester mothers in the early 1950s who placed an ad in the newspaper simply seeking other parents of children with intellectual disabilities. At that time, children and adults with intellectual or developmental disabilities were hidden away and forgotten in institutions such as the ones in Faribault and Rochester. Since its incorporation in 1955, our ARC has been a driving force in our community for establishing education, group homes, day programs, supported employment, self-advocacy, and recreation for people with disabilities. Today, people with disabilities and their families trust the ARC for information, assistance, education, and public policy leadership. The ARC's vision is for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families is to have the hope, confidence, and knowledge they need to live a life they choose, and equitable systems support them where they live, learn, work, and play. Thank you for supporting the ARC Minnesota Southeast Region.
Is by Julia Watts-Belser. It's entitled, "This is the Landscape." So reads the doormat of conditional welcome. Here will pass the enabled. Blessed be their less complicated bodies. They will be able to hustle up a flight of stairs, decipher the PA, endure fluorescent lights, and follow long, thick, complicated words. They will not come with service dogs or baby strollers, with sign language, wheels, or walkers. They will be strong and stoic like machines that never break, expectant of perfection. They will not come a-hobbling. I will not run with them, those who would devour my wholeness because it does not measure up standard-sized. I will not come begging on my knees. This is the landscape of loneliness, the stink of pity, the way someone's story of tragedy curls around my body where it doesn't belong. Well-meaning people apologize for the wrong things. I'm sorry about the scooter, they say. I'm not. I'm sorry about what passes for the accessible entrance, the back way where they cart out the trash, about the sidewalks that never quit without curb cuts, the single step that could have been smoothed, or the accessible dorm where the disabled students live. Good thing they don't want to visit their friends. I'm sorry you haven't had the privilege of seeing me in your schools, your delis, your bathrooms, your boardrooms. I'm sorry you don't even know to miss me, that you grew up in a world that didn't bother to build me a way in. But this is the landscape, and I'm not sorry. I'm angry, and I'm weary, and I'm tired of waiting. There are apologies due, but they needn't all come purling from my lips like bribes to the border guards of an inaccessible terrain. I am not sorry. I'm not the one who's shamed.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shelly, Rohe, and I was a member of the First UU Church of Rochester for 5.5 years. I currently live in Los Angeles under safer at home orders. I'm very grateful to be asked by the AIM team to join their annual service celebrating the 30th anniversary of the signing of the ADA. Growing up, I always knew I wanted to help people. I spent my study halls in high school helping in the EB classroom or emotionally and behaviorally disturbed classroom in the elementary school in Zumbrota. My first full-time job out of high school was working on the Gold Unit at the Hiawatha Adult Home in Rochester. I was extremely excited to be working as a residential counselor because I had chosen psychology as my major. I had no idea at the time what a residential counselor was or what the job entailed, but I knew I was excited. What I didn't expect was that that decision would have a lasting effect on my life and color every part of it since. That was in 1991. The ADA had just been signed the summer before, but I knew nothing about what that meant at the time. Working on the Gold Unit was like working with a segregated society. Most of the people had come from larger institutions and couldn't move to smaller group homes for whatever reason. It was a unit apart, a place for people labeled severe to profoundly developmentally disabled. Some of the people had had all the teeth removed because they were labeled as potential biters. Some of the people had been on such heavy medication that they were permanently altered. One man in particular had never spoken. He had violent seizures, but was always laughing at something just outside of your understanding because of the heavy sedation medication he had been on. I was shocked to find out that at one point he could speak. He looked you in the eye and could carry on conversations. I was asked to sit in on the therapy session with a man whose diagnosis was spastic quadriparesis. This man had been living at Hiawatha for a long time. He was in his late 30s, and it was a session to test his vocabulary. I guess no one had thought to test his IQ before that. And he tested out at a high school level, even though he had never been to school. I was in disbelief. The immediate sense of pride I felt was washed away by the utter revulsion of the thought that he was literally stuck here. Who had thought this was the right place for him? The staff were so busy attending to all sorts of needs, and he had his own room because he couldn't speak, but always had a smile on his face. He was often overlooked and very understimulated. But it was here that I learned that disability is part of human life. No one had asked to be here, and having 10 roommates made for some very intense and uncomfortable moments. But my fears and reservations working here had been washed away. People are people, period. Everyone is worthy and everyone has something to contribute. I went on to graduate cum laude with departmental honors in psychology with a minor in biology and genetics from Hamline University, with lofty ideas that I was going to change the world. I worked at many companies with all kinds of people, from smaller group homes to helping people with mental health issues and working in schools. I've seen a lot of changes, mostly around tolerance. I wouldn't go so far as to say acceptance, and certainly not inclusion. The past 30 years have brought positive changes: curb cuts, accessible transportation, restrooms, among others. The ADA might have laws for making the world easier to navigate for people with disabilities, but it is up to all of us to pick up where the law leaves off. I found out that I have brain tumors, vascular brain tumors, called cavernous angiomas in 2006. The one in my brainstem ruptured in 2013 and needed to be removed. This resulted in the neurologic deficits I face today. I have many disabilities, but most noticeably is my wheelchair. I have seen disability from all sides. Inclusion in the largest minority group on the planet can happen to anyone at any time. Since my brain injury, I've seen how quickly my intellect has gone from someone whose opinion was sought out and respected to one that is suspect. I can't tell you how many times people talk to the person I'm with, but not to me, even if I'm the patient at a medical appointment. Places say they're accessible, but that's because they have an accessible parking space in the lot and a 2-inch lip on the door. The power wheelchair that I use weighs over 200 pounds. No one can just lift it over even a small obstacle. I now use my wheelchair as my main mode of transportation, and trips to new places are precarious at best, with tree branches causing sidewalks to buckle, and I won't even get started on doors, which are my main nemesis. But it's the little things, microaggressions, that make me want to cry. Being told people don't think of me as disabled when I clearly am negates my existence. Not seeing people like me in the media does the same thing. But it doesn't stop there. Even people with disabilities who pull their sedan into a parking space meant for a van means I can't park there. If they had paid attention, they would have seen that the very next space was also accessible. But because a car was parked on the other side of that, meant I could no longer open my van door or use the ramp. Today we celebrate the ADA for all of the good things that it has done for people with disabilities, and I applaud the AIM team and congregation in what you have all accomplished there. I can't wait to visit and use the ramp to the chancel. But there is still much to be done before all people can feel included and valued in society. Please help me uphold and practice our first principle today, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And should you accept it, my assignment for you is to figure out which parking space is meant for a van and why. Thank you.
It's good to see you today. I'm Harriet Hodgson, here with my husband, John Hodgson. We are long-term members of the church, and we're here to talk about the importance of parking for handicapped people, or it's better to say disabled people. So we're going to tell a few stories because this has been a learning experience for us. We had no idea of how many spaces were available in Rochester, how to use the spaces, how other people use the spaces. When it came time for John's important birthday, the 80th, I called a local restaurant and said, "Are you really handicap accessible?" And they said, "Oh, of course." So we invited family members, and we got ready to celebrate John's birthday. And it was different than we thought. And what happened?
Well, they parked us all on a big long table crammed into the corner of the restaurant. And there were other tables around it very close by. And they put me on the end because of the chair. And that was a bad deal because other tables around us crowded me, and we had trouble sitting down. Plus, all the service was being done over my head. All the dishes and stuff were being passed over my head
So John wound
serve
up,
people.
He was parked in the traffic pattern, and his birthday celebration turned into a kind of a nervous experience. We kept waiting for the server's tray to slip and fall and spill food on John. So yes, they had a sign that said that they are handicap accessible, but sitting somebody in the main traffic pattern didn't work well for us, and I don't think it would work well for anyone else. So we have one tip that we would like to share with you. And that tip is a restaurant may not be totally accessible. We were also going to go to another function, and a friend of mine said, "I'll check this out for you before you go." And she called me up and she said, "Harriet, they have a ramp, but John will never be able to get his wheelchair over the lip on the bottom of the doorway. And she was very kind to check that out for us. We've had some other experiences too, and we learned that a lot of people in Rochester don't know how to use wheelchair accessible parking or don't want to use wheelchair accessible parking. So our other tip is don't park across diagonal lines. And we've had some experiences with that too. You want to tell about the time that we tried to park and you couldn't get out of the van?
Well, that's happened a couple of times. We get in a spot that's so narrow that you can't open the door once you get in there. So you either have to climb out the trunk door or do something else, park somewhere else. That's one of the problems. The other problem is that we had some people come in and hijack us out of a spot one night. And there was nobody in their car that was handicapped.
It was terrible.
But they jumped in front of me and clogged up the spot. And none of them were handicapped. They just saw an open spot and decided they were going to take it.
Yes, I was just about to pull in and this car raced in, took the spot in front of the restaurant, and 3 able-bodied people got out. And I said to John, the minute I see them, I'm going to talk with them. And he said, don't bother. And anyone who does that, in my mind, is not very respectful of others. Our last tip is that more handicap spaces are needed in Rochester. And it seems that there are enough, but when you go to use them, there are not enough. And there aren't enough because other people are parking there for their convenience. One night we were going to go out and eat at a restaurant, and I checked it out, and there was handicap parking right across from the restaurant. But when I went to park there, other cars were there, and as I was debating what to do, a very athletic man came and got in his car and drove away. He didn't need that space. He prevented someone who did need it from using it. So we hope Rochester gets more spaces. We hope residents and visitors think of others, because handicap parking is everyone's issue. Yours, mine, and all the people who come to Rochester each year.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the darkest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. Oh. I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. We are warriors, yeah, that's what we become. And I know that I deserve your love. There's nothing I'm not worthy of, for we are glorious. When the sharpest word's gonna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am proof, this is who I'm meant to be. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies.
This is me.
For the 30th anniversary of the ADA by Teresa Inez Soto, we extinguish this chalice in the spirit of liberation, honoring the many activists who said over and over that people with disabilities belong here together with us. We give thanks for the warmth of this light and for the 30 years since the Americans with Disability Act passed. We commit in the next 30 years to work for access, inclusion, and human freedom.